They told you laziness would kill your dreams. They told you discipline beats desire, that hustle beats hesitation, that if you slow down, you'll be crushed beneath the weight of those who never stop moving. And yet, 2025 has already proven something terrifying to the gospel of hustle culture. The so-called lazy are winning. Look at the data. Productivity studies released this year by Psychology Today and echoed across Medium. Essays reveal that many who are labeled lazy are actually the most efficient problem solvers. Why? Because laziness is not weakness. It is alignment. It's your brain whispering, stop wasting energy on paths that don't matter. Those who conserve effort aren't broken. They're dangerous. They're poised to strike only when the shot matters. Aristotle called it akrasia, the weakness of will. But Nietzsche flips the script. Laziness is not weakness. It's the raw potential of the will to power, restrained, coiled like a serpent, waiting to explode at the right moment. You feel lazy because you refuse to waste yourself on the meaningless grind of a world obsessed with busyness. You feel torn between ambition and inaction because your soul knows the difference between chasing shadows and chasing destiny. And here's the truth no one wants you to hear. In 2025, hustle culture is collapsing under its own hypocrisy. People who worked 80-hour weeks are burned out, broke, or begging for meaning. Meanwhile, those branded as lazy are quietly building empires through smarter leverage, through technology, through understanding their own psychology. Ambitious but lazy, that combination isn't a curse, it's a superpower. But only if you know how to use it. So the real question isn't, how do I kill my laziness? The real question is, what if laziness was the key to unlocking a truer form of ambition? What if the thing you've been taught to despise is the one thing that could set you free? The answer is hidden in philosophy, psychology, and the very structure of human desire. And if you've ever felt that gnawing pull between wanting everything and doing nothing, you're about to discover why. Because the lie you've been sold, that laziness is your enemy, is about to shatter. And when it does, you'll never see yourself the same way again. Hustle culture is the great scam of the 21st century. It dresses itself in glossy Instagram posts of entrepreneurs sipping iced coffee at 4 a.m., in podcasts where millionaires preach grind harder, while they quietly exploit other people's exhaustion. It sells you the fantasy that working yourself into the ground is the price of greatness. But here's the brutal truth. Hustle culture wasn't built to make you successful. It was built to keep you obedient. Think about it. The message is simple. If you're not rich yet, it's because you didn't hustle enough. The blame is always on you, never on a broken economic system, never on the gatekeepers of opportunity, never on the fact that 99% of this planet's wealth is locked in the hands of the few. Hustle culture thrives by making you believe that sleep is weakness, that burnout is noble, and that laziness is sin. But here's the paradox. The laziest among us are the ones breaking free. In April 2025, a Medium article went viral with a headline that shook the self-help world. Laziness wins in 2025. It argued that the people once mocked for avoiding work were the ones mastering AI, automating repetitive labor, building systems instead of running on treadmills. They weren't slaves to the grind, they were the architects of efficiency. Society had mislabeled their refusal to obey as failure, when in reality, it was rebellion. Psychologists back this up. Studies on metacognitive laziness show that many people resist tasks not because they lack ambition, but because their brain is optimizing. It's avoiding waste. It's conserving energy until the right action emerges. What looks like procrastination is often incubation, your unconscious mind piecing together a sharper, more elegant solution. But hustle culture fears this. Because if you realize that being lazy might actually be the higher form of intelligence, the whole machinery of endless grind collapses. Employers lose their leverage, gurus lose their audiences, governments lose their control over docile, overworked citizens. Here's the dangerous idea. Your laziness is not a flaw, it's a compass. It's pointing away from meaningless suffering and towards strategic ambition, but only if you stop buying the lie. The question is, if laziness is a compass, what exactly is it pointing you toward? Why do we even feel lazy in the first place? If it were truly a defect, nature would have weeded it out millennia ago. But it didn't. Laziness survived because it serves a purpose. It's not a glitch in the human system. It's a feature. Consider this. Our ancestors weren't rewarded for constant movement. The reckless hunter who wasted energy chasing everything in sight was the one who starved first. The survivor was the one who learned to wait, to conserve, to strike only when the hunt mattered. Laziness, what we now condemn, was evolution's way of protecting us from burnout before burnout even had a name. Fast forward to today, psychologists are uncovering the same truth. Procrastination, avoidance, even that heavy lethargy we call laziness, often masks something deeper. For some, it's a trauma response, the body saying, slow down, the world isn't safe yet. For others, it's evolutionary economics. A 2025 study on self-discipline found that people who resist constant effort aren't necessarily weak. They're calibrating. They unconsciously measure whether the reward is truly worth the energy. If it isn't, their body shuts them down. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. And yet society calls this failure. Why? Because a system built on factories, deadlines, and quarterly profits has no use for human conservation. It demands endless productivity because that keeps the gears turning. But biology doesn't care about quarterly profits. It cares about survival, and survival sometimes looks like sitting still. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why can bear almost any how." Laziness is your unconscious rebelling against pursuits that lack a why. That's why you can scroll on your phone for hours, yet feel paralyzed at the thought of writing that report. It isn't that you're incapable. It's that the how feels unbearable when the why is hollow. So maybe laziness isn't a sickness to be cured, but a signal to be read. It's a language your body speaks fluently, even if you've been trained to ignore it. And if you learn how to interpret that signal, you don't just overcome laziness, you weaponize it. The question is, what happens when ambition and laziness collide? When the desire for greatness meets the refusal to waste effort? That's where the paradox becomes power. Here's the paradox. The most ambitious people on earth are often the laziest. Not lazy in the sense of apathy or failure, but lazy in the sense of refusing to do more than what is absolutely necessary. History is littered with proof. The great innovators weren't the ones who loved hard labor. They were the ones who hated it so much, they built machines to do it for them. Laziness didn't kill their ambition, it sharpened it into a blade. Think about Bill Gates. He once said he'd hire a lazy person to do a hard job, because they'd find the easiest way to do it. That isn't laziness as weakness, that's laziness as efficiency. It's the same philosophy behind automation, behind artificial intelligence, behind every system that saves us from mindless repetition. The ambitious lazy person is not running endlessly on the hamster wheel. They're breaking it, re-engineering it, and then selling it to the rest of us. Aristotle would have called this a dance with akrasia, the weakness of will that keeps us from doing what we know we should. But Nietzsche takes us somewhere darker, more electric. The ambitious lazy person embodies the will to power, not by outworking everyone, but by outthinking them. Their laziness forces them to build leverage instead of shackles. They refuse to waste willpower on the trivial, reserving their energy for domination where it truly matters. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Ambitious laziness terrifies society, because an ambitious lazy person doesn't play by the rules of grind culture. They don't burn out, they don't beg for validation, and they don't die of exhaustion at 50 wondering where their life went. Instead, they appear to do less while achieving infinitely more. They look like cheats in a world that worships effort as morality. But this is where things get dangerous, because when ambition fuels laziness, laziness becomes ruthless. The ambitious lazy person doesn't just avoid wasted effort, they avoid wasted relationships, wasted morals, wasted obedience. And once you taste the efficiency of that alignment, you can't go back. So here's the question no one dares to ask. If ambitious laziness is this powerful, why do so many ambitious people still collapse into procrastination, self-sabotage, and paralysis? Why doesn't every lazy dreamer become an empire builder? The answer lies in psychology and in the dark mechanics of procrastination itself. Procrastination, the monster that stalks every ambitious lazy soul. You think it's proof of weakness, don't you? Proof that you can't control yourself, proof that you'll never get anywhere. But what if procrastination isn't laziness at all? What if it's a form of intelligence, misunderstood, demonized, and weaponized against you? In 2025, psychologists are reframing procrastination not as failure, but as a signal. Research out of European universities this year showed that procrastination is often a trauma response. The body associates action with danger, so it resists. For others, it's perfectionism. Your brain refuses to begin until the outcome feels safe enough. And for many, it's evolutionary triage. When faced with too many tasks, your mind delays not because it's weak, but because it's prioritizing survival. But here's the part society won't admit. Procrastination is often creativity in disguise. Neuroscientists found that during those lazy stretches of avoidance, the brain lights up with diffuse thinking. Ideas are connecting unconsciously, incubating like seeds beneath the soil. The procrastinator doesn't fail because they delay. The procrastinator fails because they confuse delay with death. They mistake waiting for quitting. Look closer. Even Aristotle, who condemned akrasia, the weakness of will, acknowledged that humans are not purely rational creatures. Our desires tug at us, distort our actions, and leave us in contradiction. Freud later called it the war between the ID and the superego, primal instinct against rigid morality. And Jung saw procrastination as a shadow problem. When you deny your deeper drives, they sabotage you from the dark. So procrastination isn't proof that you lack ambition. It's proof that your ambition is out of sync with your psyche. Hustle culture screams, push harder. But psychology whispers, listen closer. What are you avoiding and why? Because until you face the answer, you'll remain trapped in cycles of guilt, shame, and wasted years. But here's the twist. Once you see procrastination for what it really is, it stops being an enemy. It becomes a compass. It becomes a mirror of your truest ambitions. And that realization, if you have the courage to confront it, changes everything. Which brings us to the next revelation. If procrastination is a signal, then laziness itself is not just personal, it's political. It's a rebellion against a system that thrives on your exhaustion. What if your so-called laziness isn't just about you at all? What if it's rebellion coded into your nervous system? Because here's the truth. A society that worships constant motion needs you to believe that stillness is sin. Why? Because a rested, self-possessed individual is ungovernable. Think about it. Hustle culture isn't just a mindset, it's a form of control. It keeps you working, consuming, scrolling, producing until your body collapses. Every hour of your attention is harvested, every drop of your exhaustion monetized. And when you dare to pause, when you dare to say, no, I won't, they brand you lazy. They shame you into obedience. But behind that shame hides their greatest fear, that you might realize doing less often achieves more. In 2025, the cracks are showing. Medium writers call laziness the final rebellion against a dying system. TikTok philosophers glorify quiet ambition, a refusal to burn your soul for scraps. Even business leaders are confessing what they once denied. The laziest employees often generate the most disruptive solutions, because they're the ones who reject the grind and design their way out of it. Nietzsche warned us, morality is often just the will of the powerful disguised as truth. When society calls laziness immoral, what it really means is your refusal to grind threatens our machine. And here's the paradox. The more the system demands your endless productivity, the more radical it becomes to withhold it. So when you feel that weight in your bones, the refusal to play the game, it might not be cowardice. It might be courage, a rebellion in disguise. Your body is saying, I will not be another cog. I will not trade my soul for their approval. But rebellion alone isn't enough. If you stop here, you risk collapsing into apathy. True power comes when you channel this rebellion into strategy, when you transform laziness from resistance into leverage. So the question becomes, how do you take this raw defiance and turn it into a system that makes you unstoppable? Laziness without strategy is stagnation. Laziness with ambition becomes leverage. The difference is everything. And here's the secret. The most effective people in history weren't the ones who worked the hardest. They were the ones who refused to waste themselves. They found ways to let the world, the tools, even other people, do the heavy lifting for them. Look at technology. The so-called lazy have always been the pioneers. They hated the grind so much they invented shortcuts that reshaped civilizations. The wheel, the printing press, the washing machine. And now in 2025, it's artificial intelligence. Who are the ones getting ahead with AI? Not the hustlers grinding 16-hour days to produce more of the same, but the lazy thinkers who said, "What if the machine did this for me while I lived?" This is leverage, to align laziness with ambition. To let your refusal to grind become the fuel for creating systems, automations, and strategies that work when you don't. Psychologists call it strategic conservation of energy. Nietzsche would call it channeling the will to power into structures that outlive your own hands. Here's the shocking part. Researchers now argue that lazy ambition may be evolution's most dangerous trait. Ambitious, lazy people build tools that replace armies of workers. They create solutions once thought impossible. And once they build the system, they step back, watching the machine churn while others are still drowning in sweat. But this transformation doesn't happen by accident. It requires reprogramming how you see yourself. Hustle culture told you laziness is a sin. You must rewrite that script. See laziness as a signal, not a flaw. See procrastination as incubation, not paralysis. See stillness as a stage of strategy, not weakness. The practices are deceptively simple. Visualize the life your laziness aches for. Take the smallest possible action toward it. And then build systems that multiply that action without draining you. This is where psychology meets ideology, what positive psychology calls micro-actions, I call soul alignment. Because once your ambition and your laziness stop fighting, they merge into something unstoppable. But beware, society doesn't forgive those who bend laziness into power. Once you turn it into leverage, you become dangerous. And the world will call you selfish, arrogant, even monstrous. Which leads to the next truth. The world fears the ambitious, lazy person for a reason. Why does the world fear the ambitious lazy? Because they break the bargain everyone else has made with mediocrity. Society runs on a lie. If you work hard, you'll be rewarded. But the ambitious lazy don't play that game. They skip the line. They achieve with half the visible effort, and that makes them look like heretics in a religion built on exhaustion. Think of it. The ambitious, lazy person refuses to worship at the altar of sacrifice. They don't chase approval through suffering. They don't burn themselves alive to prove their worth. Instead, they conserve, they calculate, and when they strike, it's devastating. That terrifies people who built their identities on the grind. It exposes the hollowness of their martyrdom. In 2025, this truth is spreading faster than ever. TikTok and YouTube are flooded with a new archetype. The strategic slacker, the one who brags not about working harder, but about working smarter. They automate income streams, build businesses on minimal input, and spend their time living while others are chained to desks. And here's the shocking twist. Research shows they're often healthier, wealthier, and more creative. Hustle culture can't survive this revelation. Philosophically, this is pure Nietzsche. The ambitious lazy embody the Übermensch, those who create their own values instead of bowing to the morality of the herd. To the herd, laziness is sin. To the Übermensch, laziness is strategy, and strategy is survival. But this isn't just about efficiency, it's about power. The ambitious lazy person learns to weaponize stillness. While others exhaust themselves with frantic motion, they wait, they watch. And when the time is right, they move once, decisively, irreversibly, and everything changes. That's why history remembers inventors, leaders, disruptors, but not the endless army of grinders who paved the road with their broken backs. So here's the dangerous truth. If you embrace ambitious laziness, you'll be hated, you'll be envied, you'll be misunderstood, but you'll also be free. And in that freedom lies the seed of a new kind of ambition, one that doesn't destroy you, but fulfills you. Which brings us to the final step, how to make ambitious laziness not just a mindset, but a philosophy you live by every single day. Here's the final revelation. Laziness isn't the opposite of ambition. It's the crucible that tests it. If your goals can't survive your laziness, they weren't real goals. If your vision can't withstand your resistance, it was never your vision. It was someone else's script forced onto you. Laziness strips away illusions. What remains is the raw, burning core of what you actually want. So stop asking, how do I kill my laziness? Start asking, how do I build with it? Because when you stop fighting yourself, you free your energy to create. And creation is the highest form of ambition. The way forward is simple, but not easy. First, listen. Every time you feel lazy, ask, what am I avoiding and why? Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's perfectionism, but sometimes it's truth. Your body rejecting a path that isn't yours. Second, reframe. Replace guilt with curiosity. Laziness isn't failure, it's feedback. Procrastination isn't paralysis, it's preparation. You aren't lazy because you're broken. You're lazy because you refuse to waste your fire on what doesn't matter. Third, leverage. Build systems that multiply small actions. Use technology, habits, and automation to let your laziness do the work for you. One small input, infinite output. That's the creed of the ambitious lazy. And finally, embrace the paradox. Own it. Be the ambitious lazy person who frightens the herd, who breaks hustle culture's spell, who creates more by doing less. Make laziness your ally, your compass, your weapon. Because the world doesn't need another overworked martyr. It needs dangerous dreamers who dare to rest, wait, and then strike with precision. Nietzsche called it the will to power. Aristotle called it the battle with weakness. Freud called it the shadow. Today, we call it laziness. But tomorrow, it might just be the engine of your destiny. So ask yourself, are you truly lazy, or are you simply refusing to waste your life? Because if you're ambitious and you're lazy, then you're not doomed. You're chosen. And the moment you align the two, you stop being a victim of your laziness. You become its master. And once you do, there is nothing and no one that can stop you.